I just wanted to know, because you haven't really offered us like an alternative point of view, I really want to know what your ideology is, what you think the purpose of existence is, and what the point of your life is.
Well, I don't think there is any point to our existence if by that you mean external to human beings, if you mean ultimate, if you mean where we are finally going in the long run. I don't think there is any such. There is no answer to that. I believe that life is arbitrary and capricious and meaningless from a point of view outside of human society. But I think that what matters is our view inside, the subjective view, and I think it's very important that we treat each other well, that we live a good, rich life. I said much earlier that I disagreed with Hamza's characterization of what I think the atheist view of life is. And I think the atheist view of life is you only get one, you better do it right. And the way you do it right is to pay attention to your fellow man, be respectful of your fellow man, be interested in your fellow man and fellow woman's ideas, principles, that you be gracious, that you be hospitable. Well, I am very much a secular humanist as well as an atheist.
But why?
Why? Because that gives me a richer, fuller life, and those that I have come to love and care about a richer, fuller life. And human life is worthwhile and valuable and worth protecting and interesting from the subjective point of view of human beings. You do have to start with a principle or two, and you have to accept those principles, but you can't expect them to be absolute grounding. That won't work. You start with the principle that you should do no unnecessary harm, as the Christians put it, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And there are variations of that in almost every human culture we know anything about. Confucian China, and I'm sure there is in Islam as well.
I'm just going to be very quick on just my 10 cents on that. And when you mentioned about, Islam mixed with culture may have some good things, etc., I think that's quite unfair. I mean, atheists can be good people, so can humanists. But I would argue, since there's no moral driving force, no moral motivation, you're less likely to be. And that's actually not just an outdated cliche coming from the religious masses, because before the Christians and the Muslims would be like, you're an atheist, you're a bad person. But that's not really true, and I agree with that, because Dr. Ed Buckner, besides the fact that he cusses my mother, is still a really nice guy. For example, in 2000, political scientist and Professor Robert Putnam, he surveyed 200 volunteer organizations, and it showed that there was a positive correlation between religiosity and membership to these philanthropic organizations. This is why the Index of Global Philanthropy says religious people are more charitable than non-religious, not only given to their own congregations, but also regardless of income, region, social class, and other demographic variables. And I think the reason for this is not an accident, because there's a positive correlation, is because there's a moral driving force, something that the sister was talking about, and purpose. And to add to the purpose, I mean, we attribute purpose to the most ridiculous things like moths and insects. For example, there's a particular moth that its job is to eat the excrement of a moth above it when it's drinking the sap of a particular tree. Now, if there was moth genocide and we killed 6 million moths, we wouldn't really care. But we attribute purpose, which is almost like the toilet of the first moth. But we want to attribute something purpose to ourselves that's more dynamic and has something more creative. And from the atheist position, we could infer, and I think we can, that we're just on the sinking ship. We're on the Titanic, aren't we? Because the universe is going to die out one day. It's going to suffer heat death. Nothing's going to happen. So we're on the Titanic. What's the point of reshuffling the deck chair or shaking the hand of an old woman or giving her a glass of milk or whatever she drinks? But the point is there... No, but let me make the point. You could argue when I've made the point. So
it's clearly a fallacy in that you are...
I have to make the point.
Only if there's an ultimate purpose can we care about each other.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But when you reduce it to relative purpose...
You only have one life, you have to do it right.
Yes, but when you have relative purpose, the issue is when someone could decide to have a purpose to basically, I have one life, I want it to be full and rich, well, let me steal, let me eat as much as I can, let me be like certain hegemonic empires, take all the resources, give none to no one else, and we have something called which I call atheist capitalism in a way, which has this world view that a very minority would have all the resources, and most of the world, like 2 billion people on the planet, don't even have sanitation and food and water. I mean, this is a disgrace. And I would argue because there is no moral motivation. I agree with you, with your stance on relative purpose, but if you don't have moral motivation, you're going to have the state of affairs that we have today.
Okay, there's quite a few